More than 2 decades is indeed an unusually long time in the global war on terror, a war the United States has led. Yet this long involvement has also steered the world's leading sea power toward certain imbalances. Over many years, Washington concentrated heavily on strategies to fight small, irregular forces, and in doing so seems to have drifted away from the goal of maintaining the full spectrum power needed to face peer competitors. The question now is whether the United States still has the capacity to confront large-scale maritime conflicts, and what new weapons could help it close capability gaps simultaneously in Europe and across the vast Pacific. Before exploring what secret weapon the U.S. Navy might use in the Pacific, let's review some facts about American military power in general and why, despite a mighty fleet, it still needs such a weapon. First, we all know that today the United States and China stand as the world's largest military powers, and the U.S. has long felt obliged to exert greater influence than any other force. Evidence of this is the constant American presence at hotspots worldwide, providing stable presence, training foreign militaries, and enforcing international norms across many seas. Money has always been a strength for the U.S. military. In fiscal 2014, Washington allocated $610 billion to defense. By 2024, that number rose to roughly $840 billion, far ahead of rivals like Russia or China. Regarding manpower, the military balance reported in 2014 that about 1.9 million U.S. service members served across the armed forces, supported by some 14,000 civilian specialist positions. In a crisis, the Pentagon can mobilize reserves totaling roughly 770,000 people. U.S. citizens can enlist at age 18 or 17 with parental consent, and maximum ages vary by branch. For example, the Army typically caps new recruits at 35, while the Marine Corps prefers those under 28. With a population of over 340 million in 2024, the United States has a vast mobilization pool. Roughly 120 million people are eligible to serve. In short, the U.S. not only fields a massive standing force, but also retains deep strategic reserves. Not only does it have a large military, it also fields some of the most powerful fleets in the world. Many military scholars acknowledge that wherever the U.S. Navy shows up, it exerts tremendous influence, especially across the Pacific, the planet's largest ocean. Nonetheless, even the most formidable fleets are not always sufficient. Over recent decades, explosive advances in military technology have let the U.S. build a massive, modern Navy and Air Force, a scale that preserved strategic advantage through the late 20th century and into the new millennium. But in the 21st century, sheer numbers of ships and aircraft no longer guarantee victory at sea. Instead, the critical factors are platforms suited to specialized roles and equipped with advanced technologies. Over time, the U.S. adjusted its military posture by reducing the quantity of legacy platforms and shifting toward multi-role ships and aircraft capable of performing many missions. This shift shows in the development of advanced warships and aircraft such as the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer and the multi-role F-35 fighter. These modern platforms mark the strategic inflection point. Arleigh Burkes can engage in missile defense, strike land targets, patrol, and protect carrier strike groups, while F-35s provide flexible air support and precision strike capabilities. That approach allowed the U.S. to maintain presence while lowering personnel and procurement demands, but it also created trade-offs. Multi-role systems raise research and logistics costs and are often bought in smaller numbers. During the U.S. military's heyday, the fleet counted thousands of combatants. At peak periods, the force reached around 6,768 warships and roughly 300,000 combat aircraft. But after the Cold War era of heavy investment in R&D and advanced multi-role platforms, the fleet contracted. By 2024, the U.S. Navy counted about 290 major combatants and roughly 13,000 military aircraft. Despite the numerical decline, their combat power remains formidable, though the cost of maintaining and operating these high-tech systems has risen substantially. However, these versatile weapons also come with limitations. For example, the Arleigh Burke destroyers, though advanced and effective at detecting, tracking, and intercepting medium and long-range ballistic missiles, were primarily designed to counter missile threats rather than to withstand full-spectrum, multi-directional assaults. In large-scale conflicts, where an adversary might combine multiple weapon systems, from surface-to-air missiles and cruise missiles to fighter jets and submarines, the destroyers could face difficulties maintaining defensive effectiveness, relying solely on the Aegis missile defense system might not guarantee the safety of an entire fleet. Furthermore, although the Arleigh Burke-class boasts state-of-the-art air defense systems, it lacks diverse layers of active protection compared with some other warship types. This realization prompted U.S. strategists to look for new ways to supplement existing naval forces. Their solution, an unconventional secret weapon, transforming commercial cargo ships into missile carriers. The idea emerged as the U.S. sought to expand its military presence and deterrence capabilities in the Pacific. One of Washington's main concerns is China's massive arsenal of ballistic missiles, including anti-ship missiles capable of threatening U.S. naval formations. This situation compels the U.S. to strengthen missile defense, a task in which Aegis-equipped destroyers play a central role, while simultaneously expanding the number of vertical launch systems, VLS, across the Pacific. These VLS cells would not only enhance missile defense, but also boost offensive flexibility. The proposed answer was simple but ingenious: convert ordinary cargo ships into missile barges. In 2019, a group of 5 experts, including a Navy captain and a Marine Corps colonel, published an article in the U.S. Naval Institute Proceedings proposing precisely that. They argued that the U.S. could quickly acquire and modify commercial cargo vessels for combat purposes by installing missile launch systems on their decks, then anchor them at strategic points throughout the Pacific. In fact, the U.S. already has experience deploying missile systems on large non-combat ships. These systems can operate effectively from modified cargo decks, especially when paired with advanced targeting data and computing power. For instance, integration with platforms such as the F-35S sensor and targeting network could allow these missile barges to launch precision strikes with minimal new technological development. To build an effective fleet of missile barges, the first step would be to acquire commercial cargo ships already available on the market. But buying large numbers of merchant tonnage en masse could be politically sensitive. Mass purchases might be interpreted by China as escalatory. Practically, however, a protracted conflict would sharply reduce commercial traffic in contested waters, lowering ship values and creating buying opportunities. In peacetime, some used double-hull cargo vessels sell for $25 to $50 million. On the secondary market during a crisis, prices can fall to $1 to $2 million for heavily used hulls. That market dynamic would let the U.S. Navy procure hulls cheaply if necessary. Once procured, ships could be converted into missile platforms in a matter of months. Conversion approaches vary. One option is to mount vertical launch system VLS cells directly on deck, a rapid method that preserves the ship's cargo profile while adding strike capability. Another approach is to hide launcher containers among normal cargo, making these vessels harder to distinguish from ordinary merchant traffic. Both methods exploit the fact that many modern targeting systems, combined with network sensors and advanced computing, can efficiently queue and coordinate missile fires from dispersed launch nodes without bespoke, newly developed weapon designs. Modifying a container ship to carry VLS and Tomahawk-like cruise missiles is technically feasible within a 3 to 6 month time frame, and the cost of conversion is small compared with building new warships. Converted container hulls would carry a mix of VLS tubes sized for cruise missiles, creating mobile, distributed magazines that can be repositioned across the ocean. That diversity of basing would increase the total number of VLS cells in theater without requiring construction of new surface combatants. Operationally, these missile barges would be networked into the existing battle management architecture. Aegis destroyers and other command ships would handle targeting and command and control, using their radars and data links to coordinate strikes from the outside. A well-disguised barge looks like ordinary commercial shipping, complicating an adversary's ability to target it based solely on remote sensing. Modern high-resolution sensors sometimes struggle to identify nuanced ship configurations from afar. A converted merchantman can therefore complicate enemy targeting and force them to expend reconnaissance resources, converting too many hulls into high-density missile platforms. However, creates risks. A vessel laden with hundreds of VLS cells becomes a lucrative, easy-to-find target. A more balanced plan is to convert a modest number, perhaps 10 to 15 ships, outfitted with 30 to 50 cruise missiles each. That spreads risk, maintains striking power, and limits the political and logistical burden of a mass conversion program. Another major challenge is personnel training. Enough naval crews quickly under traditional military models would be slow. To solve this, planners have proposed a hybrid crewing model, mixed crews of Navy officers and experienced Civilian mariners. Navy officers would command and run combat systems, while civilian mariners would manage routine ship handling and engineering tasks. This mixed model shortens the time from conversion to operational deployment, leverages merchant marine experience, and can help ensure legal compliance with international maritime rules. Trials of similar crewing arrangements have occurred on auxiliary vessels, demonstrating the concept's practicality. Each missile barge would carry a compact crew of roughly 30 personnel, split between naval and civilian roles. Internally, hull space can store substantial supplies, enabling long transits and survivability during contested operations. Retaining cargo capacity for legitimate goods can also serve as an additional layer of disguise and provide logistical sustainment for prolonged deployments. Cost-effectiveness is a key advantage. A converted barge costs only a small fraction of a modern aircraft carrier or destroyer to field and maintain, yet it multiplies the number of available launchers. If tensions with China continue to rise, channeling resources into such barges could be one of the highest return on investment ways to rapidly increase missile density in the Pacific, enhancing both deterrence and operational flexibility. When the Navy moves quickly to buy and retrofit merchant hulls into missile barges, one of the biggest hurdles is manpower. Traditional recruitment and training pipelines cannot meet urgent operational timelines. A practical solution is the hybrid crew model. Each barge would sail with a mixed team of U.S. Navy officers and seasoned civilian mariners. Navy personnel would handle weapons, sensors, and command functions. Civilian sailors would run navigation, engineering, and day-to-day seamanship. This arrangement shortens deployment timelines, leverages existing merchant marine skills, and helps keep the vessels compliant with international maritime law. Trials on auxiliary platforms have shown the mixed crew approach works in practice. A typical missile barge's complement might be about 30 people, roughly split between military and civilian roles. Large internal cargo spaces can store food, fuel, and spare parts, boosting endurance for long transits across ocean basins. Keeping some legitimate cargo aboard can also serve as an additional layer of disguise and provide logistical resilience during extended operations. The economics are compelling. The conversion cost for a merchant hull is only a sliver of the price of a new major combatant or carrier. Fielding several barges quickly can multiply theater VLS capacity far faster and cheaper than building new warships. If tensions with China rise, shifting procurement priorities toward these barges could produce a disproportionately high increase in missile density across the Pacific. For relatively modest fiscal outlays, there are, naturally, trade-offs and risks. Highly concentrated VLS loads on converted hulls would make them tempting targets. Dispersing missiles across multiple modestly armed barges reduces that vulnerability. Mass purchasing of merchant tonnage in peacetime risks diplomatic blowback. Conversely, a conflict-driven market shock that depresses ship prices could make rapid procurement politically and financially easier. Operational security and rules of engagement for disguised or dual use vessels also create legal and escalation challenges that planners must address. In short, missile barges represent a pragmatic, cost-efficient force multiplier. They expand the number of launchers in theater, complicate an adversary's targeting calculus, and can be brought online faster than new surface combatants. For the U.S. Navy, they offer a flexible means to plug capability gaps, particularly in an era when technologically advanced, multi-role platforms are expensive and limited in number. Some proposals imagine outfitting barges with hundreds of VLS tubes, but that approach creates oversized, high-value targets that are vulnerable to enemy strikes. A more prudent mix would convert a modest number, perhaps 10 to 15 merchant hulls, each fitted with roughly 30 to 50 cruise missiles. That spread preserves robust striking power while limiting the strategic payoff to any single enemy attack. A rapid procurement tank conversion program raises practical challenges beyond crew composition. Shipyards and conversion facilities must be able to install VLS modules, power and cooling, command and control links, and other mission systems on short timelines. Logistics chains must supply missiles, spare parts, and sustainment packages across vast ocean distances. Legal, political, and escalation risks are real. Outfitting seemingly civilian vessels with offensive weapons complicates established maritime norms and could blur the line between combatants and non-combatants, raising questions under the law of armed conflict and potentially escalating crises. Mass buying of merchant ships in peacetime could be interpreted as provocative by rivals. To mitigate those risks, Planners might favor conversion only in times of acute tension or rely on transparent legal frameworks and well-communicated rules of engagement to minimize misperception. Survivability also requires attention. Missile barges are not designed to withstand heavy combat, so tactics for their protection are essential. Dispersal, mobility, deception, and integration into layered air and missile defenses are central, using Aegis-equipped ships, submarines, maritime patrol aircraft, and distributed sensor networks to shield barges and complicate enemy targeting. Camouflage and dual-use cargo loads can help conceal offensive capability, forcing an adversary to expend valuable reconnaissance and strike resources to find them. From a cost-effectiveness standpoint, missile barges deliver outsized returns. A converted hull costs a fraction of a modern surface combatant or carrier, yet meaningfully increases theater VLS density in a constrained fiscal environment. The barge option offers a way to rapidly bolster deterrent and offensive capacity without the decade-long timelines and multi-billion-dollar bills of new shipbuilding. Strategically, missile barges would change the calculus in a Pacific showdown. They would expand the number of dispersed launch nodes, complicate enemy targeting and denial strategies, and provide commanders with flexible options for both defensive and offensive fires. In short, they become a force multiplier that can help plug capability gaps while the Navy modernizes and expands more conventional combatants. In conclusion, missile barges are neither a silver bullet nor risk-free, but with modest investment, careful legal and operational safeguards, mixed crewing, and thoughtful force design choices, they represent a pragmatic, affordable, and rapidly deployable means to increase U.S. missile density in the Pacific and help the Navy cope with the evolving threat environment. If tensions with China continue to rise and the possibility of direct confrontation becomes more realistic, the U.S. Navy could be forced to reprioritize its procurement and budgeting to accelerate investment in missile barges. Missile barges are a highly leverageable option, low per unit cost, fast conversion, and the ability to reuse existing weapon stocks via LS cells and cruise missiles mean they can be fielded quickly and affordably. They complicate an adversary's targeting problem, expand the number of dispersed launch nodes, and provide commanders flexible options for both defensive and offensive strikes. At the same time, they demand new doctrines for protection, legal frameworks for use of dual-use vessels, and careful rules of engagement to limit escalation risks. In short, missile barges are not a cure-all. They are a pragmatic, cost-effective force multiplier that can help the United States plug capability gaps in the Pacific and preserve strategic options while longer-term shipbuilding and modernization programs proceed. With proper operational security, mixed crewing, layered defenses, and judicious employment, they could become an important tool for sustaining U.S. maritime power in an era of rising great power competition. In summary, missile barges, retrofitted commercial ships equipped with vertical launch systems, represent a bold new direction for U.S. naval strategy. They are not meant to replace traditional warships like destroyers or aircraft carriers, but to complement them by increasing missile launch capacity in a cost-effective, rapidly deployable way. By leveraging surplus merchant hulls, the U.S. Navy can expand its operational footprint, improve flexibility, and sustain long-range strike capabilities even in the face of tightening budgets or industrial constraints. The concept also fits neatly into the broader American strategy of distributed lethality, spreading combat power across more numerous, harder-to-target platforms. In a future Pacific conflict, where Chinese anti-ship missile networks could threaten large, concentrated forces, distributed launch platforms like missile barges could ensure that the U.S. retains the ability to strike back from multiple directions. They add depth, unpredictability, and resilience to the U.S. Navy's presence across the world's most contested waters. Economically, the benefits are undeniable. Compared with a $13 billion aircraft carrier or $2 billion destroyer, a converted cargo vessel costing a few $1 million provides enormous bang for the buck. Even with training, retrofitting, and operational costs factored in, these vessels deliver a far greater return on investment, especially during high-stakes competition with China, where speed and scalability may matter more than prestige or complexity. Strategically, missile barges also symbolize adaptability. They demonstrate how a traditional superpower can reinvent its approach to maritime warfare. In an era where advanced technology, economic efficiency, and operational dispersion matter as much as raw tonnage, if implemented wisely, with clear legal oversight, strong command and control integration, and defensive protection, these barges could become one of the most influential innovations in 21st century naval warfare. In the end, the secret weapon of the U.S. Navy in the Pacific may not be a futuristic supercarrier or stealth destroyer, but something far simpler, a fleet of humble cargo ships reborn as floating missile arsenals, inexpensive, flexible, and capable of reshaping how America projects power across the oceans.